In this video, I'm going to turn a 40-foot school bus into a luxurious, fully equipped home with everything you could possibly imagine. The project is by an American YouTuber famous for his crazy builds on YouTube, but this one is the biggest and most expensive project he's ever done in his life. It took him more than a year to complete. It sounds unbelievable, but it's actually happening. He had been frustrated for a long time with the ridiculously high rental prices. The idea of having to pay a large amount every month became really annoying for him. So he decided to buy a full-size school bus. And yes, the bus is massive, absolutely huge. But that's exactly what makes it perfect for turning into an ideal home, especially since it's fully functional and has no issues at all. To give you an idea, it can reach a speed of 70 miles per hour. When the bus first arrived at his house, there was a lot of work to do. The first step was remove all 28 seats from the bus. It was completely packed with seats that needed to be taken out, so he started removing them with his fiancée. And while they were busy taking the seats out, let me explain just how insane this project is going to be. The first modification step was cutting the roof and raising it to increase the bus height by 7 feet. That's about 120 centimeters. This part is one of the most important and beautiful modifications because it would allow them to design the home with 2 floors instead of just 1, as we'll see later. Inside, the ceiling height would reach 9 feet, making it the tallest roof ever raised on any bus on YouTube. The first thing they did was remove the metal roof and get rid of the old insulation attached to it. After that, all the windows were taken out, and there were a lot of them. School buses are usually filled with seats and windows everywhere. He actually hadn't finished removing all the windows yet at that point, which is why in almost all his videos, you'll notice windows around him in every filming spot. Eventually, all the windows were successfully removed, leaving the bus looking kind of scary. His dad joked, saying, "I feel like I'm in a zombie bus." Then came the hardest and most crucial part, raising the roof. It was a nearly impossible task, requiring extreme precision and effort to lift it properly.
His father designed wooden jacks, or supports, as we usually call them in the Arab world, to be placed on both sides of the bus. These supports helped lift the roof safely and evenly. The entire roof was cut off, just like opening the lid of a box. When it was time to lift the roof, they went to one support, raised it a bit, then moved to the next one and raised it by the same amount. They had to do this gradually because there were only a few of them and the roof was extremely heavy. You can actually see the roof starting to move. It took countless attempts to balance it properly, but in the end, they succeeded, as you can see. The surprise was that this wasn't the only extension. The bus length was also increased by another foot. Once they finally reached the full height, it became clear how massive the bus was going to be. But their first priority at that point was removing the wooden jacks, because even a small mistake or imbalance could cause the roof to fall, so it had to be secured quickly. They used metal pipes for reinforcement, attaching them by welding them across the middle sections of the window frames that had been cut in half earlier. After that, the pipes were welded together to lock the structure firmly in place. They worked on this process all night long without sleeping, until sunrise. Fortunately, the operation was completed successfully. Right after that, they immediately began installing the walls of the bus. To do this, they used screws and metal sheets, securing the sheets to the metal pillars that had been welded before. After all this work, the bus had transformed into a solid, stable frame ready for shaping. As you can see, the difference between before and after was huge. The interior height had now reached around 3 meters from the floor to the ceiling. Once the walls were done, they moved on to installing the flooring. The process started with laying down a thick plastic layer to prevent water from seeping into the bus. Then they added 3 inches of insulating foam to protect against humidity and mold while also providing a strong insulation layer. On top of the foam, they placed thick wooden boards, which acted as the subfloor, ensuring the surface stayed stable and firm without shaking whenever someone walked on it. After that, he moved on to finishing the walls. Of course, he couldn't just install the finishing layer directly on the metal or iron structure, so he began by reinforcing the walls with wood. He first used metal screws to attach the wooden beams to the metal pillars that had been welded earlier. The area you see in front of you is where the front door would be. He started widening the space for it and used a cutting saw to carve an opening for the door in the metal sheet. His father lifted the wooden door for him while his fiancée helped hold it in place to secure it properly. If you take a look now, you'll notice that the old look of the bus has completely disappeared. It looks entirely different. The new interior layout is truly incredible. It will feature a bedroom with an office above it, a full bathroom, and even another bedroom on the upper level. The section they're currently working on is actually the second bedroom, which is more like a small upper loft, similar to what we usually call a mezzanine in apartments. The structure supporting this upper loft will also serve to separate the driver's cabin completely, turning it into a private room, fully independent from the rest of the bus. Next, they built a flat roof. Unlike most bus conversions that keep the original curved roof, which admittedly looks nice, Chase preferred a flatter design to make the bus feel more like a regular house. So, as you can see, he went for a flat roof. After that, he began working on the bathroom area, which would include a toilet, a sink, and a full-size shower. He even cut out a section of the ceiling for the bathroom vent, which he'll explain in more detail later. At the back of the bus, the space was dedicated to the master bedroom and the office. The rear section, just below the upper loft, would be used as the office area. At this stage, they were busy installing the flooring and building the foundations and wooden frames for the walls. These frames would later hold the finished wall panels. Meanwhile, his father was working on installing the kitchen windows. The area they were in at that moment would become the living room, which would also include the kitchen. That's why it was important to make sure plenty of natural light could enter this part of the bus.
At that point, Chase was busy filming another video, and Colby was helping him out, so his father took over this task entirely on his own. He began cutting out the spaces for the kitchen windows using a saw. There were going to be 2 large windows in the kitchen area. He built wooden frames for them and installed aluminum windows, which I personally think are better since they provide stronger sound and heat insulation compared to wooden ones. Once the windows were installed, the result was amazing. They looked absolutely beautiful. Now came the next big challenge, installing the massive water tanks under the bus. In any converted bus or mobile home, there are typically 3 types of water tanks: the freshwater tank, the gray water tank, and the black water tank. The freshwater tank supplies clean water throughout the entire house. The gray water tank collects used water coming from the sink and shower. As for the black water tank, it stores waste and toilet water. According to Google, the average capacity of black water tanks in mobile homes ranges between 15 and 50 gallons. But Chase decided to install a huge 200-gallon tank, which is massive. That means he could use about 250 gallons of water before needing to empty it again. The freshwater tank had a capacity of 100 gallons, and the gray water tank was the same size. After positioning the tanks, he built a wooden frame around all of them for support, as you can see. Then he began working on the plumbing system, which is one of the hardest stages in any construction project. As professionals always say, good craftsmanship shows in the foundation, not just in the final finish, and you'll be surprised here at how precise and well-built their plumbing setup was. This marked the final step before moving on to the insulation phase using foam. At this stage, the bus had already started to look completely different. The windows were installed, the air conditioning units were in place, and the electrical wiring was complete. But believe me, all of that was nothing compared to what came next. Once they sprayed the foam insulation, the transformation was incredible. The result looked like a completely new creation. And keep in mind, this was all before they even started the interior finishing, which was going to look absolutely stunning.
Here, Chase finally revealed the true purpose behind the entire project. 6 years ago, he met his fiancée, Kelsey, and now his plan, after finishing the bus conversion, is to take her to the beach and propose to her at the end of the video. This bus will become their future home, the place where they'll live together afterward. Without a doubt, this is one of the most impressive projects ever featured on YouTube. He mentioned that he plans to make a lot more content like this in the future, and he's confident that there's nothing quite like it out there. He also invited viewers to become part of the crew, subscribe to his channel, and share their opinions about his work. At this stage, they started covering the entire bus with drywall panels, or what's known as hanging wood panels. Chase and Kobe installed the first board in the living room and kitchen area. Then they moved on to the hallway, which was much more challenging because the space was narrow and full of curves. After several attempts, they managed to cut the panel to fit the shape of the ceiling perfectly. Using a support beam, they held the panel in place. The support was crucial because without it, the board could fall before the adhesive set properly. Once they finished the living room and kitchen area, they cut multiple openings in the ceiling for hidden LED lights to brighten up the interior. After nearly 2 months of working in a dark bus, light finally filled the space, and the difference was incredible. Next, they were going to move to the storage area, but the kitchen walls still needed work. They focused on that for a while, installing wooden panels around the small window, then moved on to the section with the 2 large windows to complete it. After that, they started building the storage unit so they could finish up the kitchen walls and then completed the section around the door. Meanwhile, Kobe was working in the laundry room and the end of the hallway so they could begin installing the staircase which would lead to the master bedroom. At the same time, Chase was closing off the driver's cabin, preparing it for the door installation. When he designed the interior layout of the bus, he intentionally left a 9-foot-high space above the bathroom. This would give him a large storage area once he moved into the bus, and even more importantly, it provided the perfect spot to place a dehumidifier. You can see in the video how it looked once he installed it in that upper space.
Let me explain the importance of that device. When you live in a bus or any small enclosed space, one of the biggest problems you'll face is humidity. Simply put, humidity is the amount of moisture present in the air. Normally, air conditioners help control it, but in a small space like this bus, the AC units alone can't handle all the moisture in the air. If the humidity level gets too high, it can lead to mold growth and many health problems. That's why adding a dehumidifier was absolutely essential for this project in particular. They also took their time installing a proper ventilation system for both the kitchen and the bathroom, routing the pipes toward the exterior of the bus. After finishing that, it was finally time to install the bathroom ceiling. At this stage, their mission was to transform all the chaos you see into a stunning, fully functional bathroom. His father began by waterproofing the entire bathroom, as it's the area most exposed to moisture. This was one of the most satisfying parts to watch. He applied a full waterproof membrane across every section of the shower area. The shower itself is one of the most important parts of the bus, because if it isn't sealed correctly, it can cause serious problems later on. The shower space was surprisingly roomy, not cramped at all. It featured dual shower heads, dual controls, and double spray outlets. They even added a small built-in shelf in the wall for shampoo and other items. While his father was busy working in the bathroom, Chase was working at the back of the bus, adding the office and the loft ceiling. He designed the ceiling with a curved shape instead of a flat one like the rest of the bus to create extra space and give the area a slightly bus-like feel. However, the space was still quite dark, so he drilled holes for hidden lighting and installed 6 recessed lights across the area. Meanwhile, in the bathroom, they finally began tiling. Chase and his fiancée wanted the bathroom to have a sleek, modern look, so they decided to use the same glossy tiles across the entire space for a seamless, elegant finish.
Once the bathroom was done, it was time to move on to the kitchen. After Chase and Kobe finished designing it using a 3D modeling program, they were both really excited to see how it would look in real life. Chase has always loved cabinetry, so this was one of his favorite days of the entire build. The installation of the cabinets would completely transform the look of the kitchen. While Kobe was busy mounting the cabinets, Chase focused on the driver's area, which was in really bad condition. Since he'd be spending hours driving there, it had to be clean and comfortable. The entire front section you see was about to be completely redone. To clean it properly, they had to remove everything. The flooring came out, and even the engine cover was taken off. It looked pretty scary at that stage, but that was the only way to ensure the space was thoroughly cleaned. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, Chase was building a wooden frame to hold the refrigerator in place. This frame was essential to keep the fridge stable and secure, preventing it from moving or shaking while driving. Once that was done, he filled the empty space above the fridge with upper cabinets. If you look closely, you'll notice he marked specific spots on the cabinets. Those markings were for installing small ambient lights. These soft lights would create a warm and cozy atmosphere across the cabinets and the entire kitchen area. After finishing the cabinetry, Chase went back to the driver's area and noticed the dashboard plastic looked really old and worn out. He decided to repaint it completely to give it a fresh, modern look. Then he installed a new vinyl or parquet-style floor, paying attention to even the smallest details. The result was stunning. The whole area transformed completely from this to this. On the other side of the kitchen, they began installing the kitchen table, which was wide enough to comfortably fit 4 people. It was an important addition that made the space far more functional and efficient. Once the cabinets were fully installed, they moved on to the painting stage. The black color they chose looked incredibly sleek and gave the kitchen a bold, modern appearance. They painted the loft ceiling white so that the entire upper area would have a clean, unified look. And as you can see, the result was absolutely spectacular, a complete transformation. After the painting phase, it was finally time to tackle all the small finishing touches they had left behind earlier.
They installed the upper trim pieces to cover all the roof curves and added trim around the windows as well. Around the same time, Kobe began working on the cabinet doors that would go in the kitchen area. He even made the upper cabinet doors with frosted glass panels for a more elegant look. Kobe carefully prepared, painted, and mounted every door himself. However, there was a major challenge ahead, getting a washer and dryer inside the bus. Both machines were huge, and his fiancée had always dreamed of having a dedicated laundry room, so he had designed the perfect space for them. The problem was getting those large appliances through the narrow stairs and tight hallways to their designated spot. Kobe called for help from his dad and a friend, and they all tried repeatedly to fit the machines inside, but nothing worked. They spent a long time standing on the steps, experimenting with different angles and approaches, but still couldn't make it happen. Since the appliances were just too big, they came up with an alternative plan. They temporarily disassembled the dryer and placed it in the office area, then moved the washing machine into its spot first. After that, they lifted the dryer back up and stacked it on top of the washer. After several exhausting attempts, they finally managed to fit both machines perfectly into their designated space. You can see them here pushing the washer with all their strength to get it into position exactly as Chase had planned it. He had measured that section precisely to fit the machines snugly, ensuring they would stay stable and not shake or move while driving. Chase even mentioned he hoped nothing ever breaks, because removing them again would be an absolute nightmare. Next, they moved on to bringing in the massive refrigerator, which surprisingly was much easier to install compared to the washer and dryer. It slid in smoothly without nearly as much effort. With that done, the living area was finally complete. It was a truly special moment for Chase. He had spent 4 months working on this project, and his fiancée still had no idea that he was planning to propose to her at the end of the video.
He mentioned that she had been supporting him from his very first YouTube video up until now, and that morning marked the start of one of the most important days in the entire build.
That day was special because it was the one when they would finally build the rooftop deck. But why was that so important? Well, aside from how amazing it would look, it would also serve as a great hangout spot for camping and relaxing. And since very few people had done something like this, it was going to make the bus truly stand out. Installing the railing on the roof was quite complicated. The bus had already reached the maximum legal height limit, so they designed custom folding hinges that allowed the railings to collapse when not in use. That way, they could stay within the legal height limit and avoid any issues on the road. After welding the metal posts, they surrounded the entire deck with safety cables to prevent anyone from falling off. Then they built a metal ladder that would allow them to climb up to the rooftop deck. At this point, the bus was nearly finished. Only a few small details remained. Kobe was now in the bedroom area, installing insulation in the ceiling so that he could later put up the wall panels and lighting. Meanwhile, on the other side of the bedroom, his dad was making use of the space under the stairs, turning it into a custom storage cabinet. As for Chase, he was busy working on one of the most important tasks, the electrical system. Since the bus didn't have a direct power connection, Chase decided to build a complete off-grid electrical setup himself. This system was powered by 4 200-amp 12-volt batteries, and when the bus was on the road, the batteries would automatically recharge through the vehicle's alternator without needing to plug into any external power source. Each battery weighed around 135 pounds, so you could see how exhausted Chase was carrying and mounting them. Once he had all the batteries secured and connected, he ran 2 thick cables to the engine compartment to hook them up to an auxiliary power generator he installed himself. This generator would keep the batteries charged whenever the bus was running, meaning they'd have a virtually unlimited power supply on the go. After confirming that everything was working perfectly and neatly organized, he started laying down the carpet flooring, which was an essential step before beginning work on the bed structure. The bed was designed in 2 sections, with one part sitting right above the engine cover at the rear of the bus.
The second section was fitted with hinges above all of these components, so it can be opened and closed easily, as you can see. Directly above the desk, the floor was finally ready for carpeting. Before laying the carpet, they installed an underlayment layer that makes the surface much softer and warmer. And as always, the carpet immediately gives the space a homely feel. Look at how it turned out. You'll notice how perfectly suited the space has become for daily living. Now for the feature they've been waiting months for, installing the roof vent fan. This bus is likely one of the only ones in the world fitted with a ceiling fan. Next, they returned to the bathroom to finish the last details. They installed a smart toilet, repainted the ceiling with a fresh coat of paint, and chose black to better coordinate with the ceramic tile. They fitted the shower, taps, control panels, and the vent cover, then began tiling. Honestly, it was surprising to see ceramic tile laid across the entire bus. It's not the obvious choice, but Chase absolutely nailed it. Once the tile was in, the bus instantly looked far better. They tiled the entire living area and even above the kitchen cabinets. You'll notice them constantly using clips to guarantee the tiles stay level and secure. Tile also brings practical advantages. It's much easier to clean than wood, so this was a huge step toward turning the shell into a real home. The living room was excellent now, but it was missing one very important item: a couch. The problem was you can't just buy a ready-made couch that will fit that exact space, which meant he'd have to build a custom sofa himself. There was one more problem: he had absolutely no experience building a couch frame. So he ended up watching countless YouTube videos and followed them step by step.
He had absolutely no idea how to do it, as I mentioned before. But if you think about it, this wasn't his first challenge. In the beginning, he didn't even know how to install the ceiling or what technique to use, and he definitely never imagined he could build a rooftop deck that looked that amazing. The one thing that was always clear, though, was that whenever he faced a challenge, he kept going until he found a solution.
His commitment alone always led to incredible results, and that's exactly what happened with the couch. They managed to build a beautiful one, even though they'd never done anything like it before. At this point, the inside of the bus looked absolutely stunning, but unfortunately, the outside still looked exactly the same as it had 6 months ago. Nothing had been done to it, so it was finally time to give it a complete transformation. They decided to paint the entire exterior of the bus white, and you can immediately see the difference. The classic yellow school bus color was completely gone, replaced with a sleek, elegant look. Finally, Chase booked the best beachfront camping spot in his area, about 5 hours away from where he lived. While the bus was being finished, his dad worked creatively on the kitchen tiles, and then they installed the curved range hood that Kobe had built himself. They added the final touches, setting up the desk, arranging the mattresses, and checking every detail inside the bus. After 6 long months of hard work, everything was finally done. The bus was ready. Chase drove it to the beach, and there he proposed to his fiancée. Of course, she said yes. I mean, of course she did. She couldn't ruin his video after all. They'd already been engaged for 6 years, so she was probably tired of waiting anyway. And just like that, this officially became their new home. Even better, it was the very first video on his channel. So, from the bottom of my heart, I hope you'll tell me what you think about this content, what kind of challenge you'd like to see next, and of course, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you so much.